I didn't know he had more discretion than other people, said Pierre. For discretion argues brains, and he hasn't any more brains than the rest of us, in my opinion. No, you were wrong there. Discretion hasn't anything to do with brains. Brains are an obstruction to it, but it does not reason. It feels. Perfect discretion means absence of brains. Discretion is a quality of the heart, solely a quality of the heart. It acts upon us through feeling. We know this because an if it were an intellectual quality, it would only perceive a danger, for instance, where a danger exists. Whereas, hear him twaddle, the damned idiot, muttered the paladin. Whereas it being purely a quality of the heart and proceeding by feeling, not reason, its reach is correspondingly wider and sublimer, enabling it to perceive and avoid dangers that haven't any existence at all. As for instance, that night saw when the paladin took his horse's ears for a hostile lance and got off and climbed a tree. It's a lie without shadow of foundation, and I call upon you all to beware how you give credence to the malicious inventions of this ramshackle slander mill that has been doing its best to destroy my character for years, and will grind up your own reputations for you. Next. I got off to tighten my saddle girth. I wish I may die in my tracks if it isn't so, and whoever wants to believe it can, and whoever don't can let it alone. There, that is the way with him, you see. He never can discuss a theme temperately, but always flies off the handle, becomes disagreeable. And you notice his defective memory. He remembers getting off his horse, but forgets all the rest, even the tree. But that is natural. He would remember getting off the horse because he was so used to doing it. He always did it when there was an alarm and the clash of arms at the front. Why did he choose that time for it? Asked Joan. I don't know. To tighten up his girth, he thinks to climb a tree, I think. I saw him climb 9 trees in a single night. You saw nothing of the kind. A person that can lie like that deserves no one's respect. I ask you all to answer me. Do you believe what this reptile has said? All seemed embarrassed, and only Pierre replied. He said hesitatingly, well, I hardly know what to say. It's a delicate situation. It seems offensive to refuse to believe a person when he makes so direct a statement. And yet I'm obliged to say, rude as it may appear, that I'm not able to believe the whole of it. No, I'm not able to believe that you climbed 9 trees. There, cried the paladin. Now what do you think of yourself, Noel Rangusen? How many do you believe I climbed, Pierre? Only 8. The laughter that followed inflamed the paladin's anger to white heat, and he said, I bide my time, I bide my time. I will reckon with all of you. I promise you that. Don't get him started, Noel pleaded. He is a perfect lion when he gets started. I saw enough to teach me that after the third skirmish. After it was over, I saw him come out of the bushes and attack a dead man single-handed. It is another lie, and I give you fair warning that you are going too far. You will see me attack a live one if you are not careful, meaning me, of course. This wounds me more than any number of injurious and unkind speeches could do. Ingratitude to one's benefactor. Benefactor? What do I owe you? I should like to know. You owe me your life. I stood between the trees and the foe, and kept hundreds and thousands of the enemy at bay when they were thirsting for your blood. And I did not do it to display my daring. I did it because I loved you and could not live without you. There, you have said enough. I will not stay here to listen to these infamies. I can endure your lies, but not your love. Keep that corruption for somebody with a stronger stomach than mine. And I want to say this before I go, that you people's small performances might appear the better and win you the more glory. I had my own deeds through all the march. I went always to the front where the fighting was thickest, to be remote from you, in order that you might not see and be discouraged by the things I did to the enemy. It was my purpose to keep this a secret in my own breast, but you forced me to reveal it. If you ask witnesses, yonder they lie on the road as we come. I found the road mud. I paved it with corpses. I found the country sterile. I fertilized it with blood. Time and again I was urged to go to the rear because the command could not proceed on account of my dead. And yet you miscreant, accuse me of climbing trees. Ha! And he strode out with a lofty air, for the recital of his imaginary deeds had already set him up again and made him feel good. Next day we mounted and faced toward Chinon. Orleans was at our back now and close by, lying in the strangling grip of the English. Soon back, soon English. Soon, please God, we would face about and go to that relief. From Joan and the news had spread to Orleans, the peasant maid of Vaucouleurs was on her way, divinely commissioned to raise the siege. The news made a great excitement, great hope. The first breath of hope those poor souls had breathed in 5 months. They sent commissioners at once to souls to the king to beg him to consider this matter and not throw the help lightly away. These commissioners were already at Chinon by this time. When we were halfway to Chinon, we happened upon yet one more squad of enemies. They burst suddenly in the woods and in considerable force, too. But we were not the apprentices we were 10 or 12 days before. No, we were seasoned to the kind of adventure now. Our hearts did not jump into our throats, and our weapons trembled in our hands. We had learned to be always in battle array, always alert, and always ready to deal with any emergency that might turn up. We were no more dismayed by the sight of those people than our commander was. Before they could form, Joan had delivered the orders, "Forward!" and we were down upon them with a rush. They stood no chance. They turned tail and scattered, we plowing through them as if they had been men of straw. That was our last ambuscade, 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 and it was, I don't know what is emphasized in that word. I mean, ambush, so ambuscade. And it was probably laid for us by the treacherous rascal, the king's own minister and favorite, de la Trimoise. We housed ourselves in an inn, and soon the town came flocking to get a glimpse of the maid. Ah, the tedious king and his tedious people. Our 2 good knights came presently, their patience well wearied and reported. There they and we reverently stood, as become persons who are in the presence of kings and the superiors of kings, until Joan, troubled by this mark of homage and respect, and not content with it, not yet used to it, although we had not permitted ourselves to do otherwise since the day she prophesied that wretched traitor's death, and he was straightway drowned, that confirming many previous signs that she was indeed an ambassador commissioned of God, commanded us to sit. Then the Sieur de Metz said to Joan, "The king has got the letter, but they will not let us have speech with him." "Who is it that forbids?" "None forbids, but there be 3 or 4 that are nearest in person, schemers and traitors every one, that put obstructions in the way, and seek always by lies and pretexts to make delay. Chiefest of these are Georges de la Trimoille and that plotting fox, the Archbishop of Reims. While they keep the king idle and in bondage to his sport and folly, they are great and their importance grows. Whereas if ever he asserts himself and rises and strikes for the crown and country like a man, their reign is done. So they but thrive, they care not if the crown go to destruction and the king with it. You have spoken with others besides these? Not of the court. No, the court are the meek slaves of those reptiles, and watch their mouths and their actions, acting as they act, thinking as they think, saying as they say. Wherefore they are cold to us, and turn aside, and go another way when we appear. But we have spoken with the commissioner from Orleans. They said with heat, "It is a marvel that any man in such desperate case as the king can moon around in this torpid way, and him and see him and see his all go to ruin without lifting a finger to stay the disaster. What a most strange spectacle! I can't talk anymore. They said with heat, "It is a marvel with the commissioners from Orleans. It is a marvel that any man in such desperate case as is the king can moon around in this torpid way and see his all go to ruin without lifting a finger to stay the disaster. When a most strange spectacle it is. Here he is, shut up in this wee corner of the realm like a rat in a trap. His royal shelter, this huge gloomy tomb of a castle, with rummy rags for upholstery and crippled furniture for use, a very house of desolation. In its treasury 40 francs, and not a farthing more. God be witness, no army, no any shadow of one. And by contrast with this hungry poverty, you behold this crownless pauper, and his shoals of fools and favorites tricked out with gaudiest silks and velvets you shall find in any court in Christendom. And look, he knows that when our city falls, as falls it surely will, except succor comes swiftly, France falls. He knows that when the day comes, he will be an outlaw and a fugitive, and that behind him the English flag will float unchallenged over every acre of his great heritage. He knows these things. He knows that our faithful city is fighting all solitary and alone against disease, starvation, and the sword to stay this awful calamity. Yet he will not strike one blow to save her. He will not hear our prayers. He will not even look upon our faces. That is what the commissioners said, and they are in despair. Joan said gently, "It is pity. But they must not despair. The Dauphin will hear them presently. Tell them so." She almost always calls the king the Dauphin. To her mind, he was not king yet, not being crowned. We will tell them so, and it will content them, for they believe you come from God. The archbishop and his confederates have for backer that veteran soldier, Raoul de Beaucourt, Grand Master of the Palace, a worthy man, but simply a soldier, with no head for any greater matter. He cannot make out to see how a country girl, ignorant of war, can take a sword in her small hand and win victories where the trained generals of France have looked for defeat only, for 50 years, and always found them. And so he lifts his frosty mustache and scoffs. When God fights, it is but small matter whether the hand that bears his sword is big or little. He will perceive this in time. Is there none in that castle of Chinon who favors us? Yes, the king's mother-in-law, Yolande, Queen of Sicily, who is wise and good. She spoke with the Sieur Bertrand. She favors us, and she hates those others, the king's beguilers, said Bertrand. She was full of interest and asked 1,000 questions, all of which I answered according to my ability. Then she sat thinking over these replies until I thought she was lost in a dream and would wake no more. But it was not so. At last she said slowly, as if we were talking to herself, "A child of 17, a girl, country bred, untaught, ignorant of war, the use of arms, and the conduct of battles, modest, gentle, shrinking, yet throws away her shepherd's crook and clothes herself in steel, and fights her way through 150 leagues of hostile territory, never losing heart or hope, and never showing fear, and comes, she to whom a king must be a dread and awful presence, and will stand up before such a one and say, 'Be not afraid, God has sent me to save you.' Ah, whence would come a courage and conviction so sublime as this, but from very God himself?"